You're not losing your mind. You're going through exactly what Carl Jung mapped out decades ago. The confusion, the challenges, the feeling of complete transformation. Jung documented every stage of what you're experiencing. He called it individuation, and he discovered it follows a precise psychological pattern that every person on the path of self-discovery must navigate. Today I'm revealing Jung's 5 stages of spiritual awakening, the actual psychological process Jung observed in hundreds of cases. Each stage has specific markers, unique challenges, and profound gifts that only emerge when you understand the process. Once you recognize where you are on Jung's map, you'll finally understand why this journey feels like becoming a completely new person. Here's what changes everything. Jung discovered that spiritual awakening isn't random or chaotic. It's a structured transformation of your entire psyche. Like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, you go through a complete metamorphosis. Jung mapped this process with scientific precision, identifying exactly what happens at each stage and why most people get stuck along the way. The first stage has already begun if you're watching this. The call, when something deeper awakens. Jung called it the summons from the self. That moment when your deepest essence begins calling for authentic expression. It doesn't begin with bliss or enlightenment. It begins with what Jung termed sacred restlessness, a deep knowing that your current life isn't aligned with who you truly are. Here's what Jung discovered. The call isn't gentle. The self, your authentic core, creates what Jung called meaningful discomfort, persistent feelings that something's missing, a sense of emptiness despite external success, physical tension that has no medical cause, achievement that feels hollow. Your psyche is signaling that change is needed. Jung wrote, "The first stage of individuation is often experienced as dissatisfaction with the status quo. Everything that once provided meaning loses its power. This isn't pathology. It's the self requesting its true expression." The call manifests through specific signs Jung documented extensively. You wake at night with existential questions that won't leave you alone. Your successful career suddenly feels inauthentic, like wearing clothes that don't fit. Relationships that once fulfilled you now feel limiting, not because they're bad, but because you've outgrown who you were in them. Everything you've achieved seems less meaningful than before. You're not clinically depressed. You're experiencing what Jung called the hunger for deeper meaning. What makes the call so powerful is its persistence. It's not one area of life that feels off. It's a fundamental sense that you're not living your true path. The foundations you've built on feel unstable, like sand shifting beneath your feet. The goals you've pursued seem empty, like chasing mirages in the desert. The identity you've constructed feels like a mask that's becoming increasingly uncomfortable to wear. Jung identified the psychological mechanism behind the call through years of careful observation. Throughout life, you build what he termed the adaptive personality, a functional self that helps you navigate society, achieve goals, gain approval. This adaptive self is necessary for survival and success in the world. But creating it often requires compromising your true nature, suppressing authentic desires, and conforming to external expectations. Eventually, the authentic self can no longer tolerate this compromise and begins what Jung called the push toward wholeness. This push intensifies gradually but relentlessly. Jung observed that people in the call stage often feel like they're outgrowing their own life, like a plant that's become root-bound in a pot too small. The old self is becoming too confined, but the new self hasn't emerged. You're suspended in what Jung called the space between stories, no longer able to believe the old narrative about who you are, not yet able to see the new one. Many people try to resist the call through various strategies. Some throw themselves into work, hoping achievement will fill the emptiness. Others seek new relationships, thinking the right person will satisfy the longing. Some pursue material goals, believing more success will quiet the restlessness. But Jung discovered that these strategies only delay the inevitable. The call continues until you finally acknowledge the truth. Your old way of being is complete. The self is ready for fuller expression, and no amount of external success can satisfy this inner calling. The call stage ends only when you stop resisting and start listening, when you acknowledge that the discomfort is meaningful, not random, when you accept that transformation is necessary, not optional. This acceptance doesn't mean you know what's coming. It simply means you're willing to find out. But answering the call leads you into unexpected territory. The encounter with your shadow. Jung called it shadow work, the essential stage where you meet and integrate the parts of yourself you've hidden or rejected. This is where spiritual awakening reveals its true nature. Not just reaching for light, but embracing your wholeness, including aspects you've kept in darkness. Here's what Jung discovered through decades of observation. The second stage of awakening involves facing everything you've pushed away, not to eliminate it, but to integrate it. Every quality you've denied, every emotion you've suppressed, every aspect you've hidden must be acknowledged and embraced as part of your complete self. Jung wrote, "The shadow is not your enemy, but your completeness waiting to be recognized." Integration of the shadow is essential for wholeness. We cannot be truly conscious while parts of ourselves remain unconscious. The shadow encounter has unmistakable characteristics Jung meticulously documented. You begin noticing qualities in others that trigger strong reactions, irritation, judgment, even disgust. Jung discovered these are often your own disowned traits being reflected back. That arrogance you can't stand in others, it might be your own unacknowledged confidence. That weakness you judge, perhaps your own vulnerability you've rejected. That selfishness you criticize, possibly your own needs you've been denying. Emotions you thought you'd overcome resurface with surprising intensity. Anger you believed you'd processed returns stronger than before. Sadness you thought you'd healed emerges from unexpected depths. Fear you imagined you had conquered shows up in new forms. These aren't setbacks. They're parts of yourself requesting integration. What makes shadow work so transformative is that you're not just observing these aspects, you're owning them as parts of yourself. You recognize that the anger you judge in others lives in you too, and it might actually be justified passion waiting for conscious expression. The vulnerability you've avoided is actually your capacity for deep connection. The power you feared claiming is rightfully yours and needed for your authentic expression. Jung distinguished this from negative self-judgment through what he called the quality of compassionate integration. You're not criticizing yourself for having shadows. You're acknowledging them as natural parts of being human. The goal isn't to eliminate these aspects, but to consciously integrate them so they serve rather than sabotage you. Your anger becomes healthy boundaries. Your selfishness becomes appropriate self-care. Your pride becomes genuine self-worth. Shadow work often triggers what Jung called profound self-discovery. Hidden talents emerge from suppressed aspects, creativity from chaos, leadership from aggression, intuition from irrationality. Authentic power comes from integrating rejected strength. Deep compassion arises from accepting your own humanity, including the parts you once thought made you unworthy. The process can be challenging. Meeting your shadow means facing everything you've worked to avoid. It means admitting capacities you'd rather deny, for both darkness and light. Many people discover they've been hiding not just their perceived weaknesses, but also their strengths, their power, their brilliance. Jung called this the golden shadow, the positive qualities we've disowned because they seem too much, too bright, too threatening to others. Jung observed that those who try to skip shadow work never achieve genuine transformation. They become what he called spiritually imbalanced, reaching for transcendence while leaving parts of themselves behind. They might appear enlightened on the surface, but remain triggered by their projections, controlled by their denials, limited by their repressions. True awakening requires embracing your complete humanity, both the qualities you're proud of and those you've been ashamed to acknowledge. The shadow work phase completes when you've integrated these aspects with compassion and wisdom. You no longer need to be perfect. You need to be whole. You accept all parts of yourself as valid expressions of your humanity. You understand that every shadow contains a gift. Every weakness holds strength. Every darkness carries its own light. This integration prepares you for an even more profound encounter, meeting your inner wisdom. This is Jung's most fascinating stage. After integrating the shadow, you encounter what he called the soul image, the anima in men, the animus in women. This is your inner wisdom figure, the part of your psyche that bridges conscious and unconscious, rational and intuitive, known and unknown. Jung wrote, "The soul image is your internal guide to deeper wisdom. It represents the bridge to unconscious knowledge, connecting everyday awareness with the deeper layers of the psyche. This meeting transforms how you understand intuition, creativity, and inner guidance." Here's what actually happens in this remarkable stage. After shadow work, you discover an inner wisdom figure that carries tremendous psychological and spiritual insight. This figure appears in dreams, meditations, and moments of deep reflection. It's not mere imagination, but what Jung called autonomous wisdom, an aspect of your psyche with its own intelligence and perspective. For men, the anima manifests as inner feminine wisdom, carrying intuition, feeling, and connection to the unconscious. She appears in various forms: the wise woman offering guidance, the muse inspiring creativity, the inner voice of feeling and intuition. She might be nurturing or challenging, comforting or confronting, but always serving the purpose of connecting you to deeper wisdom. She represents your soul's wisdom in feminine form, balancing your masculine consciousness with feminine depth. For women, the animus manifests as inner masculine wisdom carrying clarity, direction, and spiritual meaning. He appears as the wise guide offering perspective, the inner teacher providing structure, the voice of clarity cutting through confusion. He might be supportive or demanding, encouraging or critical, but always serving to connect you with spiritual meaning and direction. He represents your spirit's wisdom in masculine form, balancing your feminine consciousness with masculine clarity. What makes this encounter so powerful is that you're meeting a source of wisdom within yourself that you may never have known existed. This inner guide has its own voice, its own perspective, its own insights that often surprise you with their depth and accuracy. You can dialogue with it through active imagination, receive guidance through dreams, Feel its influence in creative expression. Many people discover a profound inner teacher that's been waiting patiently for recognition. Jung emphasized the importance of conscious relationship with this soul image. The key is learning to receive its wisdom without being overwhelmed by it, dialogue without losing yourself, relationship without dependency. Some people become so fascinated with this inner figure that they lose interest in external life. Others project it onto real people, falling in love with someone who seems to embody these qualities. The challenge is maintaining conscious relationship with it as an internal guide. When properly engaged, this inner wisdom becomes what Jung called the function of relationship. Not just relationship with others, but with your own depths. It guides you through psychological territories your everyday mind couldn't navigate alone. It offers perspectives your rational mind couldn't reach. It provides creative solutions your logical thinking couldn't generate. It becomes your internal companion, offering insights that transcend ordinary thinking, discovering your authentic center. This stage often brings remarkable creative flowering. Artists discover new depths of expression. Writers find authentic voice. Leaders develop intuitive wisdom. Healers access profound insight. The soul image serves as a conduit for wisdom that seems to come from beyond personal experience, yet feels intimately familiar. Yet, even this profound encounter is preparation for what comes next. If you're recognizing these stages, if you've felt the call, worked with your shadow, or encountered your inner wisdom, you're exactly where Jung's map says you should be. Each stage is necessary. Each challenge serves growth. Before we explore the final 2 stages that complete the transformation, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share in the comments which stage you're currently experiencing. Your journey might inspire someone else's path. Now, these last 2 stages reveal the culmination of the awakening process. Jung called it self-realization, the stage where you finally encounter the organizing center of your complete psyche. This isn't finding something outside yourself. It's discovering what Jung called the self, the archetype of wholeness and meaning that has been guiding your entire awakening journey from the very beginning. Here's what Jung discovered through careful observation. The self has been present all along, orchestrating every stage of your journey. It created the call that disrupted your comfortable life. It guided the shadow work that brought wholeness. It arranged the soul encounter that opened inner wisdom. But only now, after these preparatory stages, can you consciously recognize and relate to it. This recognition is what Jung called the shift of center, realizing that your everyday ego isn't the center of your being. Something deeper, wiser, and more comprehensive is. Jung wrote, "The experience of the self brings a feeling of standing on solid ground inside oneself, on a patch of inner stability that external circumstances cannot shake." The approach to self-realization has unmistakable markers Jung documented through years of research. You begin experiencing powerful symbols of wholeness everywhere. Circular patterns in nature catch your attention. Dreams feature mandalas or other symbols of completion. You feel drawn to images of unity and integration. You sense an unshakable center within, a source of wisdom that's both intimately personal and universally connected. Synchronicities increase dramatically, with meaningful coincidences occurring so frequently that reality itself seems to be responding to your inner state. What makes this stage so profound is the quality of knowing that emerges. This isn't intellectual understanding, but what Jung called direct knowing, immediate, clear, undeniable awareness that needs no external validation. You don't believe you're connected to something greater. You experience it directly as lived reality. Meaning doesn't need to be searched for. It reveals itself naturally in everything. Your deepest wisdom becomes easily accessible, like a well that never runs dry. Jung emphasized that self-realization doesn't mean the ego disappears or becomes irrelevant. Instead, a cooperative relationship forms between ego and self, like a partnership between equals with different roles. The ego becomes the self's representative in daily life, handling practical matters while staying connected to deeper wisdom. You live simultaneously as an individual person with personal concerns and as an expression of something infinitely greater. This creates what Jung called the unity of opposites, the ability to embrace paradox without conflict or confusion. You're both limited and unlimited, understanding your human constraints while touching infinite possibility. You're temporal and eternal, fully present in time while aware of timeless dimensions. You're individual and universal, completely unique while fundamentally connected to all life. These aren't just philosophical concepts, but lived experience that transforms how you move through the world. The key at this stage is avoiding what Jung called inflation, mistaking yourself for the self, rather than recognizing you're in relationship with it. The self is the deeper wisdom within you, not your personal ego inflated to cosmic proportions. This distinction keeps you grounded while connected to transcendent wisdom. You're not special or chosen, you're simply conscious of what exists in everyone. But even self-realization isn't the end of Jung's map. The return, living your wholeness. Jung called it the completion of individuation, the final stage where you return to ordinary life as what he termed an integrated person. But this isn't going back to who you were. It's living from your wholeness, bringing your realization into everyday existence, becoming a living bridge between transcendent wisdom and practical reality. Here's what makes this stage so important and often challenging. Many people who achieve realization either become inflated with their discovery, thinking they're above ordinary life, or withdraw from the world entirely, seeing everyday concerns as beneath their spiritual achievement. But Jung discovered that true individuation requires what he called living your wholeness, expressing your realization through normal existence, finding the sacred in the ordinary, becoming a bridge between dimensions of experience. Jung wrote, "The individuated person becomes a channel through which wholeness can manifest in the world. They don't abandon everyday life for spiritual pursuits or ignore spirit for material concerns. They unite both in their being." The return has specific characteristics Jung identified through decades of observation. You re-engage with ordinary life, work, relationships, daily responsibilities, but from your authentic center rather than from ego drives. You participate fully in the world while maintaining connection to deeper meaning. You play social roles consciously, knowing their roles but playing them with full presence and purpose, like an actor who knows they're acting but commits completely to the performance. What distinguishes the return is the quality of natural flow that emerges. You no longer struggle between spiritual and material concerns. They're united in your being. Inner and outer life are no longer in conflict. They inform each other. Personal needs and service to others aren't opposed. They're complementary aspects of wholeness. You move through life with what Jung called effortless authenticity, being yourself fully without forcing or pretending. The return involves what Jung called creative contribution. The individuated person doesn't just achieve personal wholeness, they naturally contribute to collective well-being. Through their presence, work, and creativity, they share their wholeness with the world. This happens organically, without preaching or forcing. Simply by being who they are, they give others permission to be authentic. By living from their center, they remind others that centeredness is possible. This stage continues evolving throughout life. Jung saw individuation as an ongoing spiral. You continue cycling through the stages at ever deeper levels. Each cycle brings greater integration, deeper wisdom, more complete authenticity. The journey that began with the call becomes a lifelong process of growth and expression. Here's Jung's complete map of spiritual awakening: the call to authentic life, the shadow integration for wholeness, the encounter with inner wisdom, the self-realization of your true center, and the return as an integrated person. These aren't random experiences, but predictable stages in the journey Jung called individuation. Jung wrote, "The stages of individuation follow natural psychological law. Just as physical development follows patterns, psychological development follows recognizable stages from unconsciousness to consciousness." These stages aren't always linear. Jung called them spiraling development. You might revisit stages multiple times, each time at a deeper level. Throughout life, you might experience several calls, each leading to deeper authenticity. Shadow work continues as new aspects surface. Inner wisdom deepens with experience. Self-realization expands with practice. The return becomes more natural and complete. Jung emphasized that these stages can't be rushed or skipped. Each serves essential psychological functions that build on each other. The call awakens you to possibilities beyond your current life. Shadow work creates the wholeness necessary for genuine transformation. Inner wisdom provides the guidance for navigating unknown territory. Self-realization establishes your authentic center. The return expresses your unique wholeness in service to life. What Jung understood that modern approaches sometimes miss: this journey requires both patience and support. Each stage has its challenges and potential pitfalls. People can get stuck without understanding or guidance. Having a framework helps navigate the process consciously rather than blindly stumbling through. Remember Jung's words: your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. These stages aren't just theory, they're the map to becoming who you've always been meant to be. If you're in one of these stages, feeling the call, integrating shadows, discovering inner wisdom, realizing yourself, or living your wholeness, you're part of humanity's great transformation. Walking the path Jung mapped through his own profound journey. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to join thousands navigating these stages together. To dive even deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening, click the recommended video on your screen now.